And so do you have any insight into like what it is about crystals that people are drawn to in terms of like healing properties? Like what do people think about how do people rationalize the ability of a crystal to heal them? Do you have any insight into that? What have you heard from your customers?
Yeah, there's a couple of different things. One of the ways that people will scientifically rationalize it is through quantum physics, right? They're you can tell that they don't really have a grasp of quantum physics when they're explaining it, but
Hmm.
it's one of the things that, well, everything vibrates on a quantum level, and if you take one thing that's vibrating and put it next to another thing vibrating, the vibrations will affect each other. It doesn't quite work that way, but that's the way they rationalize it from a scientific point of
Hmm.
view. And then I think it gains in popularity because there are a lot of people who have medical problems that medical community in the USA are not addressing
Hmm.
in the right way, because the problems are often not physical but mental or emotional,
Hmm.
right? And so people can't get any help by going to their local general practitioner, so they end up turning to alternative methods to try to heal themselves. And I think that's why it gained in popularity. And when you have a whole bunch of people who are just like you affirming that this is what you need, it goes a long way. It's easy to become indoctrinated into it.
Hmm. And what do you think it is about crystals specifically that is alluring?
They're,
So
they
like
are.
what are
They're very
people looking for in a
aesthetic.
healing crystal?
They actually have books that you can look at, books that'll tell you all the different types of and what those crystals are good for healing. It's
Hmm.
it's honestly crazy. Excuse me. And every time somebody makes a new discovery, they find some way something that's good for too. So
Hmm.
a good example of that is there was a type of fluorescent soda light. It glows in a black light that was found in the state of Michigan on one of the beaches on Lake Superior. And the guy who found it started calling it Uper lights because they called the Upper Peninsula the Uper.
Hmm.
And now it's like crazy in the metaphysical market. The guy who discovered it did a bunch of UFO videos. He claims to have seen a bunch of UFOs and everything.
Wow.
And unfortunately, I wrote the scientific paper that identified the minerals. I kind of helped kick off the whole fad, and I kind of hate myself for it now. So
Wow. I'm gonna have to look you up later. PubMed or
yeah,
Google
there you
Scholar.
go.
That's crazy. What an interesting discovery, though. My research, I
It's
did some stuff, some work on fluorescence. Obviously, not with like minerals, but with you know, um, nanoparticle
mhm.
technology, and uh, and so I was exploiting the fluorescent properties of other organic compounds. And here's like a bunch of people trying to exploit the fluorescent properties of inorganic compounds. Uh, Interesting how close they can be. I guess that's what they rely on, right? Is like proximity to truth.
Mhm. Mhm.
That's very interesting,
Interestingly
though.
enough, some friends of mine went out looking for uranium minerals near here one night in the middle of the night with UV lights, and they found what they thought was a bunch of them, brought it back, and it turned out to be a fungus. So they were looking for organics and found organics. So,
How do you find uranium? Like you're saying that you can find like uranium containing rocks just around?
well, not just around. This was a location that was discovered back in the 50s.
Hmm.
The uranium rush in the 50s was actually the largest mineral rush in the history of the United States. It was bigger than any of the gold rushes.
Hmm.
And people were buying old civil defense Geiger counters and just walking around with them turned on all the time, just walking around through the wilderness. And that's what happened here. A guy walking up the Huron River, and his Geiger counter started clicking. And
Wow.
while there's a deposit there, it's not commercially viable. It's really, really too small. There's just not enough there for any company to be interested in going out there. So somebody like you or I can go out there and dig some up if we wanted to.
And what do you do with it once you have it?
I sell it. So,
Hmm.
but a
And
lot
it's
of
like
people
safe.
collect
Like you
it.
can like does it?
A lot of uranium minerals are a lot safer than most people think they are. I
Hmm,
have quite a few of them. We sell quite a bit of radioactives, and most of them are just gamma radiation. It's just, or not gamma, alpha radiation, and
right.
we have them inside of 2 cardboard boxes, and almost all the radiation is stopped at those 2 boxes. So
Right. Right. That's
you just
cool.
don't
I
want to lick them.
mean, yeah, exactly. Um, can you ship them?
Yeah, believe it or
Wow.
not. Yeah, you wouldn't think, but yeah, you can.
Wow, that's really interesting.
I actually went on an airplane with one once, but I didn't bring it carry on into my luggage,
Okay,
and I warned them what it was beforehand. So, but yeah, I
that's
was able to
neat.
carry one on the plane once.
And what's like the most popular thing that people come in asking for?
Um, that interestingly, and one of the things is the Uper lights I was just talking about, fluorescent
Mm,
sunlight. And probably the other two things are very new ages. One is moldavite. It's a type of tektite from the Czech Republic. And a tektite is glass that was formed when a meteorite hit the earth.
mm,
Because of the heat and the pressure of the impact, it turned the soil in the glass. And
cool.
it's a really pretty green color. It's sort of like the old 7-Up bottles, if you're old enough to
Oh,
remember the old 7-Up
really?
bottles. It's like
Okay,
that
that's
color,
really
yeah.
cool. It's
And
kind of
that's
like
one, and probably,
go ahead, Kelly.
oh, I was about to say the other one is a mineral called, it's called shungite, and it's a type of coal from Siberia, and
Hmm,
it's like 98% pure carbon. And they have this
cool.
idea in the metaphysical market right now that if you have a piece of shungite and you put it by your computer, it'll suck up all the EMF waves so it doesn't affect your health.
That's a good one. Wow.
Yeah, yeah.
And so what do you do when you encounter these people? Like they come into your store and do you try to convince them that there's no healing properties or there's no EMF sucking
Well,
properties, or how do you approach it?
I I will explain that to them, that there just isn't any scientific research that it does anything like that. But I have to walk a thin line because I still want them to spend money.
Right.
So I've learned to use street epistemology a lot. And instead of
Mm,
trying to convince somebody that they're wrong and I'm right, I try to get people thinking so that when they're driving back home from my shop, they think, wow, you know what? That's a pretty good point. Maybe there is something to that. And I actually had one woman call me after she got home and asked me some questions, and I thought that was
mm.
awesome. So yeah,
That's a huge win. Yeah, I mean,
yeah, that was a huge win for me.
and the street epistemology approach is so effective, right? Like,
Mhm.
I don't know, I find it like so effective. I use it in my like day to day job when I'm trying to, because when you're trying to convince anyone of anything, right? You use a street epistemology approach, and it's very non-confrontational as compared to some of the other approaches you could be taking. So I
Right,
think that's
and
very
it's and
effective.
it lets them figure it out on their own instead of you having to tell it to them. And
Right.
let's face it, if you're telling people something, most people will dig their heels in and go the opposite way anyway. So
Exactly.
if you can work it out so that they figure it out on their own, it's a much better teaching tool, right?
Yeah, I totally agree.